He grew up in Baltimore. Why does his name come up? On Perek Hey, Halacha Gimel. Okay, some interesting stuff tonight, as usual. Some stuff which will be shocking, but not yet. Charich over Bekerim. If you have a dugout or a trench which goes from side to side through a vineyard, Omak Asora, if the trench is 10 deep, Baruch of Arba and 4 wide, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, if it's all the way across from one side of the vineyard to the other side of the vineyard, then it looks like not only is it separate the two vineyards, but also down in the bottom of the trench, it's considered to be distinct from the two vineyards, and you can plant within that trench. If, however, the trench does not meet those measurements of 10 deep by 4 across, then it's like a wine press in the middle of a vineyard. And wine press in the middle of the vineyard is not regarded as being distinct from the vineyard because it's part and parcel of the normal equipment which you have in a vineyard. Hagash, by the way, a wine press is a stony depression in the ground where the people they press the grapes, right? That's a wine press. It actually is a flat, stony area in the ground. Okay?
You see that the wine presses were left in the fields in those days.
Wine presses were in the fields, right? They were press fields they pressed the wine in the fields. I was in high school, I think it was, and went once on a field trip. So they actually took us and showed us in somewhere near Gush Etzion, in an ancient Jewish village. They showed us how the wine presses were constructed, actually right by the fields. So they would do the tricha, the pressing of the grapes. Okay, Hagash B'Kerem, now what to tell you about wine presses. Hagash B'Kerem, if you have a wine press in a vineyard, a mukasar, which is 10 tefachim deep, a roch v'arba, and 4 tefachim wide, Zarim b'Sol, you can plant within the wine press, Rabbi Eliezer, or Rabbi Eliezer, Moshe Chachamim forbid this. Shomei Rosh B'Kerem, the Chacham, in other words, regard the wine press as being part and parcel of the field. Shomei Rosh B'Kerem, if you have a kind of a hill in the vineyard which is made for the watchman to stand on and be shomer, the shomer, a watchtower, if it's 10 tefachim high and 4 tefachim wide, you can plant within that watchtower. And the word is going to pick up what's the language of within. It should be on top of the watchtower. Okay, so the word is going to pick up on that. So, says the Mishnah further, if, however, the vines were tall and they were their foliage was inclining over the watchtower, that's forbidden to plant within the watchtower. A grapevine which is planted in the gas, in the wine press, obeneka, or in a depression in the field, no moser. So according to Anakama, it's not considered part and parcel of the general vineyard, rather it's a tree unto itself, and therefore you have to distance yourself from it. It's 6 tefachim, you can plant all the surrounding area, which is more than 6 tefachim away from the tree. Rabbi Yossi Omer, no, it's part and parcel of the vineyard. And therefore, im ein sham arba amos, if there are 4 amos, why shouldn't say it's part and parcel of the vineyard? I take that back. There's a significance to the area of which it's planted in and of itself, because it's in a depression, right, which has significance, or in a vineyard, in a wine press has significance. Therefore, if there isn't 4 amos distance on each side of it, lo yavi zel sham, you cannot plant any other grain with it in that press or in that depression. If, however, you have a house of some sort in a vineyard, so then you can plant within that house. Okay? It says more, this trench which runs through the vineyard. So how long does it have to be? That's the 4 tefachim wide. Does it have to go, mavrik means does it have to cut through like a bolt of lightning, the same shiur as the vineyard plus the amount of area which is needed to work the vineyard? Now take a look at your pictures on page Kuf Tes. I'm sorry, not page. Picture Kuf Tes. It would be a page what? Yud Gimel. You see in picture Kuftes, you see the trench is going beyond the area of the vineyard and stretching into the shear of 4 amos of avodah on either side of the vineyard. Okay? Does that have to be like that? Like picture Kuf Gimel, Kuftes? Or do we say, again, does it have to be that long that it stretches out 4 amos in each direction? So it says more, Mimadatani. You don't have the place, right? Where are we? Okay, got it. Okay. From that which it says in a brisa that Chami could see to Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov b'choritz mavrik teuva doso, that where the trench cuts across both the width of the vineyard and the 4 amos on either side. Have a can Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Savar, it must be Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov who argues in our Mishnah. Savar Meimar holds afilu einu marvik teuva avodaso, that even if it's less than it stretches less than 4 amos in either direction beyond the boundaries of the vineyard, it's still considered to be an interruption, and one can plant on the floor of the trench. And Rabbanan argue on that statement. Says Maramapli, however, what do they argue on? But show you there have to be at least 2 rows of vines on either side of the trench. We're going to Beis Hillel that a vineyard is considered to be a vineyard with 2 rows of vines. So there have to be at least 2 rows of vines on either side of the trench. By the way, I just want to give you a pause for a minute. 2 weeks ago maximum, if somebody would have asked you how many vines there have to be in a vineyard and how many rows there have to be, but 2 weeks ago, would any of you have known? Right? See how much knowledge, see how many new things that come? That is a good question. Okay? But
there's one opinion that says it should be more than this trench should be more than 4, and then there's one that says it should be less than 4.
Yeah, one opinion says it has to be stretched 4 amos on either side, but then everybody agrees that this trench is separate unto itself. The machlokas Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov, which Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov is lenient, is where the trench is exactly, its width is exactly the width of the vineyard. Okay, right, it's cut off there where your pen is, exactly.
And that the one who holds it has to be 4, why does it say it has to be 4?
That's the shear of avodas hakerem on each side. The shear which you have to leave over on all sides of a vineyard fallow, because that is beyond, and only plant other trees beyond, other grains beyond that shear. In other words, whenever you have a vineyard, it has to have a boundary of 4 amos on all sides before you can plant anything. Not a boundary. Yeah, it's called avodas hakerem because it's the area which workers work or plow when they're plowing around the vineyard. Okay.
So who holds 2 rows on each side?
Beis Hillel.
So who holds 5?
They both hold 5 trees. Beis Shammai holds 5 in a row, and Beis Hillel says in 2 separate rows. Shtaim keneged shtaim v'achas yotzei zonav. 2, 2, and 1. Okay?
You couldn't go up a fence in the field less than $1.
See, it's interesting. See, we're not talking about the barrier between the 2 sides of the field. We're talking about when the trench looks, when you can plant the bound the trench. It could be that the 2 sides of the vineyard are considered to be divided from each other when there's a trench which stretches only across the entire width of the field and doesn't extend in either direction at all. That's not the issue we're discussing. We're talking about what point does it become permissible to plant in the trench on its floor, and it's not considered to be as if it's surrounded by grapevines and therefore prohibited. That's the issue which we're dealing with. Okay? Says the more very interesting thing here. Again, Avlima so shura mapli, and where's the machlokas between Rabban and Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov? If I'm allowed to plant at the bottom of the trench or not, but show you shtei shuros become shtei shuros when there is a shear of a karam on each side. In other words, two rows on one side and 2 rows on the other side. Your picture, you have 3 rows on each side, but we're talking about at least where there are 2 rows. But if each one only had on either side of the trench, you only had 1 row of vines, then in that case, once the trench splits off 3 trees from each other, then but the vineyard is canceled, and you can plant in the trench without any problem. Okay? Because obviously the three trees, once the three trees are separate from each other, there's no vineyard in that area. Tani, we learned, Pachos mikan osir. It says if it's less, then it's osir. Now, less than what is the question? We assume that less means if the trench is less low. In other words, it's closer to the ground than 10 tefachim, so then it's also to plant in the trench some grain because it's not considered to be a separate jurisdiction unto itself. But if the trench,
Like the minimum depth.
minimum depth is 10. If it's less than 10, it's also.
Well, each measurement, why not the width also?
We're going to get to that. So it says, I understand such amina. Dalkain, meaning if the imlokain, if you wouldn't have this brisa, mana marina, what would he say? Asora, in other words, it's an obvious point. Asora also, if anything less than 10 is also, so Tishlo Koshke 9 is certainly also. So that can't be the point the Bryce is trying to make. Elamau Pozikat, so maybe say the Bryce is trying to make a point about the width of the trench. What is supposed to be called L'Rochav? That can't be less than 4 Tfachim width. Says more again. Mimana Amina Yasa Kisosum Temuta. What would you have said otherwise? What Chiddush this Bryce is telling us? Would you assume otherwise that the trench is like level ground, that whatever's in there is nonetheless mutter? How could you say such a thing? What's the mean that with less than 4 tefachim, it's considered to be permissible? That you need to tell me that it's also. Says more, a very interesting answer. Says more, v'yasek is also. You know what? It's possible that if we regard the trench as being closed, so it would be mutter. How so? How's that? Low tani shorshe, because if you make the trench as if it's closed, that means everything is growing underground. All the grain in the trench is growing underground, because the grain doesn't reach the size of 10 tefachim, right? So then I would say all the grain is growing in the ground. So if all the grain, again, if it was less than 3 tefachim, and I looked at it in a hypothetical way, I'd say everything was growing within the ground. Well, that'd be good. Some say mutter, loketani, and we learned way back when, shorshe peah nichnasum letoch arba amasher b'kerem, if the ends of the field of grain are entering into the 4 amos of the kerem, which is a no-no, but it's shlemata mishlosha tefachim, if the roots meet each other more than 3 tefachim below the ground, it's not a problem. The beginning of Kilayim there, right? So here too, you know what? That's what we're trying to preclude. I might have said if it's less than 4 tefachim wide, I look at it as if it's closed. And if it's closed up, it's as if whatever's growing there is growing underground, and it can't impede in a Kilayim fashion. And that which is above ground, so here we say that that's not true. We say that anything which grows in the trench does impede on the grapevines, and vice versa. Okay, says the Gemara, Shani Yishavir Ker Makif. Here it's different. Why is the trench different than the case which we just had, which is the case of the vines underground, the mingling of the roots underground? Why is this case different? Because here you see that the vineyard is surrounding the hole, or whatever trench it is, on all 4 sides. So therefore here we have to be more severe. In other words, there's an apparent clash, right? Marasayan type of clash. And similarly, Amlan Rabbi Eliezer said, shouldn't you concede to me that just like you're allowed to plant a grain on top of the watchman's tower in the vineyard, so you should be allowed to plant the grain in the trench, which is going through the middle of the vineyard, because amok, that which is deep, is kavod like that which is high. Why don't we allow that? So it says more, Elishavir Kerem Makif. The reason why I don't allow that is because the airspace of the Kerem is on all 4 sides of this hole in the ground, and therefore that generates a stringency. They say it's as if the Marasayan again, as if the ground is as if the grain, which is in the trench, is commingled with the grapevines that surround it. Okay, Mistabra. It makes sense to say Rabbi Lezer Modeh, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov. Rabbi Lezer could teach Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, and Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov Lo Yodei will not consider Rabbi Eliezer. How so? What are we talking about? Rabbi Lezer Modeh, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov. Rabbi Lezer could teach Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov she'amok kevukavoa. That I say in both the case of a trench and the case of a the case of a wine press where there's a single tree planted in the middle of the wine press. They're both the same. They're both considered to be all the adlachos of amok, of being deeper. In other words, the trees are growing for lower beneath the ground. Is don't play a role here because it's because I didn't make the last sentence clear. Let me start that sentence over again. Rabbi Lezer model Rabbi Yaakov. Rabbi Lezer concedes Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov. Sh'omok kigavoa. In other words, no matter what we're dealing with, if it's a depression in the ground, the depression is more than 10 tefachim deep and more than 4 tefachim across. So then I exempt that from the problem of Kilei Kerem. Because it's not part of the Kerem to make Kilei Kerem. That I concede you. However, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov lo liyodi Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov will not concede to Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer was mako by a trench. Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov was mako by a trench. He might not concede to Rabbi Eliezer. Because Rabbi Eliezer talks about even where you have in the middle of the field a wine press, which is surrounded on all 4 sides by grapevines, he still allows you to plant grain in the wine press. That's too big a chula according to
I don't see the analogy.
Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov. Yeah.
How is it comparable? One is a trench, and the other is an elevation.
No, but that they both agree. That both Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov agree that whether the dimensions are up, whether the dimensions are down, whether it's a protrusion or a...
so it also has to be 10
tefachim. Right.
High.
Right. 10 tefachim higher, 10 tefachim beneath the ground. Okay? So that we could see, we both consider Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, that Omok is kavod and kegavod. That's for sure. However, the question is like this. Says the Gemara, again, Rabbi Lezer, Mother Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, She'omah Kagova. They both hold that which is deep is the same shit that which is the high. However, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, Mother Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov allows trenches, not going to allow a gas. Why is that? Shavir Kermaki, because the vineyard is surrounded by grapevines, and that makes it also. Okay? Again, not the vineyard. The wine press is surrounded by grapevines, and that makes it also, because there's a Marisayan issue, it looks like it's part and parcel of the vineyard. By the case where the trench runs through and through the field, that's Rabbi ben Yaakov's case, nothing's going to look like the vineyard, because that which is growing in the trench has nothing at any point to do with the vineyard. However, we're dealing with here a case of the wine press. In the case of the wine press, I say that since it's surrounded by the vines, that makes it prohibited to plant something else in the middle.
A wine press of what type of dimensions?
Even 10 deep by 4 by 4 tefachim. Could be Rabbi Lezer and Yaakov will argue in that case, yeah. Could be all that since Avir Kerem Makiv, even though it's the right dimensions, you still can't do stuff there.
Even though it's stone, it looks different than the rest of the
right.
wine vineyards.
Right.
So the key is the difference is where it's Rafula Sharnat in essence, is with this hecker runs all the way through the Karen or not.
Well, that's only by the trench.
I understand.
Yeah.
But then by the wine press, you have the necessary dimensions.
Right.
So why is it that that's not sufficient according to one Mandir? Maybe because just the dimensions don't extend throughout the whole Karen.
Say that again.
In other words, the wine press has 10 by 4.
Right.
But we still don't consider it a hecker. The question is why? Is it because it doesn't extend throughout the whole Kira? Where the trench did?
Right. That's what we're saying. It says Shavir Kerem Makif.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to understand, what would cause us to say that Avir Kerem is not Avir?
Oh, maybe the Svar of Amok Kigavoa is so strong that will allow it to override this concept of Avir Kerem Makif. That was the only Havamina.
You said no.
Right. We're in the middle of saying no. We didn't finish saying no yet. Okay? Around the wine press, forgive me if I get mixed up between wine press and vineyard. Around the wine press, you have all sides trees.
Right.
That looks much more prohibited to plant in that wine press surrounded by trees than to plant in a trench, which is only on two sides vines. There aren't vines here on the north and on the south. That's what Gemara is saying. Yeah, am I not clear what's going on? Not making myself clear?
But it says the Avir.
Right. Oh, okay. So you don't like the word Avir.
I'm just not understanding.
Okay, I don't blame you for that. I empathize with your plight. But it's not, I can't do anything about it. The reason I can't do anything about it is they didn't give me the Yerushalmi to edit before they put it out. But where they have given it to me, I would have corrected that point. Okay? Says more, Rabbi Chia b'shem Rabbi Yochanan says, Tzorach sheyesham chalal arba amos. Now this is a very interesting thing, very weird. On top, when you plant on the top of the Shomera, on top of the watch hut, it's got to look like a volcano. In other words, it's got to have a depression in the middle to plant in. And that depression has to be 4 amos by 4 amos. Okay? That depression has got to be 4 amos by 4 amos. Says more, Rabbi Chia b'shem Rabbi Yochanan said, Tzorach sheyesham chalal arba. Amar Shul Yitzhak Shul said, Bagul, that's by a round watchtower. So it has to have at least 4 tvachim. Amrubos, but if it's a square watchtower, it's had significant in and of itself. Eino tzorach sheyesham chalal arba. In that case, you don't even need to have 4 by 4. No matter whatever's there, whatever the shiur is of the volcanic opening there, so to speak, that's sufficient. Rabbi Yosef said, Hada the tema bagula. All this thing of requiring a depression, a volcano type structure, is only by a round, a round structure. That's where you need a shiur, right? However, Rabbi Yossi Hada the tema bagula. Abam brubas eno tzorach sheyesham shlosha tfachim offer mil malo. But the watchtower is square as opposed to circular. So in that case, all you need is that there should be 3 tvachim by 3 tvachim on the top of the watchtower, and then you plant 3 tvachim by 3 tvachim, and that's fine. Okay, so that what you require an indentation on top of the watchtower is only when it's round. When it's square, you can plant on top of the watchtower.
So Rabbi Yossi says the same thing as Rabbi Talaf.
Yeah, but he limits it to a round one. Rabbi Yossi held at the tema bagula. In other words, when do you need 3 tvachim off from milamalon? When it's round. But if it's square, so you don't need 3 tvachim of dirt on the top in order to separate it from the vineyard. Okay? Everybody with me? It's quiet tonight. Mishlosha. Now, here's a difficult, a little bit of a difficult passage according to the Rash. The Gra is a very simple pshat in it, though. Mishlosha varabo. It said on Mishnah, if you have a house in a vineyard, you can plant grain in the house. So what shiur does the house have to be? Can it be just a plain hut? In order to plant grain in the vineyard, as long as it's in the hut. So it's more, it depends. Mishlosh varabo yimas nisin. Our Mishnah is talking about between 3 and 4 amos. If the house itself is between 3 and 4 amos squared, so then you can plant in the house. Mishlosh v'arboim masisim. Pachos mishlosh, if it's less than 3 tefachim, 3 amos by 3 amos, the house, kisas, it's as if it's closed off. And therefore you can't plant it. Mishlosh v'arboim, if it's between 3 and 4 amos by between 3 and 4 amos, so then mashlim arbov is a ram miyad. You make up the difference, so you have 16 square amos altogether, and then you plant immediately. Rabbi Shmuel said we have a pasuk which tells us that there are special parameters of houses vis-a-vis kilayim, because it says bayit bate kilayim huchbu, that Bnei Yisrael or wherever it would tell you about there were kept in secret, like people who are in their houses of kilayim. So we see here that bayit shemachbim boas hakilayim, there are houses in which one can hide stuff so it won't become kilayim. And that's a place where, let's say, a private house, not a private house, a house in the middle of the field, even though if you plant it out in the field, you have kilayim, but if you plant it in the house, there is no kilayim. Now, important thing here, let's say the house is less than 4 amos by 4 amos. Let's say it's 3.5 by 3.5. It's a hut, really. Let's say it's 3.5 by 3.5. So when you plant near the house, how far do you have to distance yourself from the house? Enough to make up what shiur from the tree inside it? 4. You have 4 amos. So in that case, you'd have to distance yourself somewhat from the house in order to plant. But where the house itself is 4 amos by 4 amos, then you don't have to distance yourself at all. Okay? Says the Mishnah further. That's called what? I'm not sure what nomenclature we call it. I don't know.
No one has to live in the house. I mean, it's really just...
No, sure, question Kilayim. It's like the source of Pesach by Kilayim. Nobody's living. Alright, it's just technicalities. Hanotei Yerek B'Kerem. If somebody plants a vegetable in his vineyard, or Mekayim, or you allow a vegetable to stay in your vineyard, in an average case, so it could be more or less, you will ban 35 grapes. Amasai, when is that true? Bisman shein at 2 arba chamesh, when they're 4 or 5 amos apart from each other. Hayin at 2 sheish, while sheva, they're planted 6 or 7 amos away from each other. You can only answer the trees that are at 16 amos, a place where you're growing the grain. Agulos, and that's in a radius of a circle. Below merubos, not in a square. We're going to have a picture of that in a minute. Rabbi Yosef ben Chanina Omar, Ushasar Kenegem Tzois. When is the tree you can answer 16 amos each direction, and you can answer 45 trees? Yeah, when the vegetation is opposite the middle tree. Rabbi Yerushalmi Shmuel said, "Vushatayam tzoya gula yerek." Has to be, not only does the vegetation have to be near the middle tree, but it has to be surrounding the middle tree. Because you have tree, and then you have the vegetation of grapevine, and then you have the vegetation surrounding the grapevine. Only in that case will we be able to make it 45 trees, as the word will explain in a minute. I'll share in the 2 O's. I'll sheish or sheva. If they're planted in a squares of, if the distances of 6 or 7, then you ask for 16 amos each direction. Agulos lo merubos, round and not square, but you don't ask for 45 trees. What are we talking about here? Rabbi Yossi ben Chanina said, first of all, you got to plant opposite the middle one. Rabbi Avin b'shem Shmuel said, the middle one has to be surrounded, as I said, has to be surrounded by vegetables. Hey Chavita, how do you have such a case? Shova shurin means shova shurin. Now take out your pictures here. Look at picture Kufyud Aleph.
I don't think that's what it means. It means the pera meaning not fruit, but
if you have
in other words,
Kufyud Aleph, you see the tree in the middle? it's surrounded by vegetation. That's the dotted line. This is a vineyard which has 49 trees. If you draw a circle the radius of 16, around the vineyard, how many trees are excluded?
I don't think that's what it means.
4. See how the circle sweeps around? It leaves 4 out because it's 6. It's each tree is 4 amos apart from the other one, and you go up to well, you go up in this picture to
A product of the fruit that, that's
it's only like 12 amos, right? He's only like 12 amos in this picture. Maybe I make a mistake. He's going 16. It's 16 to the end points, though.
If you count the space to the circle.
The radius is 16. The diameter is 32. So in a radius of 16, you can only get
extrinsic. Something that's not fruit. Something that doesn't come from fruit directly.
Okay, I really see we have to go the more further.
In other words,
let me go a little bit further. We have 7 by 7, which is 49 altogether. Take up 4 for the corners. Now the 45 left. That's what it says. Make us for 45. Amos, and when it's true. Up to 5, 5, 5. Because if it's 5, 5, 5, what's the distance to the last one in a straight line? The 3 distances. Look at your pictures. The 3 distances were 5, 5, 5 instead of 4, 4, 4. What would the distance be to the outermost tree?
Oh, the radius?
everything else goes to her.
20, the diameter would be 40.
Boo.
No.
Distance to the furthest tree.
To the furthest, you have to exclude that last.
Not diameter, Mr. Zuger. From the center.
From the center to the last tree.
Well, it's down almost between each tree.
What number did you say?
You said 5.
25, 40, 50.
No, neither are correct.
20.
50 would be the,
Wrong.
if you got a mesh.
15 amos.
Yeah, it's just 5, 5, 5.
Did anybody say 50?
No,
I didn't think so.
15.
Now it's 4, 4, 4, right? 12. Add an amma was 5, 5, 5 would be 15. Up to, as long as the distance between the trees is not more than 5 amos, you can get them 45 trees in your circle. Because the radius will hit 45 trees. When you do that sweep of anywhere between 12 and 15 amos, you're going to hit 45 trees. Is that clear? Does anybody else understand it? You got it?
I started counting. I started counting. Yeah.
I guess the question is, this whole sweeping.
Yes, yeah.
Between the trees are 5 and 50.
Right. Right.
3 trees.
Yes, what's the problem?
You're saying it's 15 because we have about 3 trees on the side.
Yeah,
Right.
Right. This is 15.
So if it's 4, then the radius is 12.
12. No, that's 12.
4 trees. So I mean, this is 4 amos, not 4 trees. 4 amos between trees. So the radius is 12 by the time you get to the 3rd tree. If this between each tree is 5, then the radius is 15. Be that as it may, as long as you're under as long as you have under four or 5 amos or less in your patch between the vines. So then I'm going to come up with a scenario where you have 45 trees which become Aser. However, says the Gemara, that's right for Rabbi Zira. Rabbi Zira Amar Shmona Chutzi Mokum Karsin. That's only true if you don't include the place of the trunks. Now, this is a little bit more difficult. Take a look at the picture. If you included the place of the trunks,
It's a vine. It's not.
it shows trunks. Grapevines have trunks.
Very small.
Right, but they still have trunks. I'm talking about millimeters, perhaps. They still have trunks. So says the Gemara, if you include again, all the Messiah, the Rabbi Zira is right for Rabbi Zira. Amar who said Shmona Chutzi Mokum Karsin, that when you measure 8 amos for the distance from a tree in a vineyard, whenever you use the measure of 8 amos, so then you need to measure the 8 besides the trunks themselves. So in that case, because if you measure the trunks, then you have a lot less than 45.
A lot less. The trunks are thicker than the.
Right. Right. Oh, if I'm sure, right. Let me see if I'm sure.
Okay. The measurement includes what now? So you say the trunk is an inch thick.
Yeah.
1 hour thick. Then what are we talking about?
Then we're adding on 12.
Now you said that
You can't see the trunk.
the flagship.
1 second.
She's not worried about that. She's not worried about the thing dying. If you're worried about dying, then you would go by land with it.
I'm not sure
have
they
to
measure
go by
it.
land.
If you measure each trunk, you're adding, say, an
And
ounce.
the space
If
between
you're
the
worried about the dying,
Is small.
you would go
Oh,
below above. Saltech, the summer in a golden period, Karen. Okay, right?
Take a big one,
The
you do.
longest been Clark and the next thing, Shem and Thomas worried that Shem will die.
how will you get 4 on this in the first
The
place?
Hail will die.
Where do you measure that? I don't know.
It's the same thing you find by the ships.
1 second. I understood where I looked at the picture before.
If you're worried the ship is going to die, you wouldn't want to.
Okay. Me and Rabbi Megansi, we both failed geometry in high school. But I really failed.
I did well. I just hated it.
I really failed one semester.
No, where you measuring? I don't know what he's measuring.
I guess the question is how much is the size of the trunk? It's 1 hour. And it's still included.
It doesn't.
Yeah, but
I would think you'd have to exclude which one just going into 4 hours between trunks, so you get less trees in the circle.
well, you see in the picture, he says the tree due west is not is within the 16 if you don't include the Malcolm Carson. That's the raya. See if it.
Not quite.
It's beyond 16.
That's right, it's beyond 16.
It's beyond 16 if you don't include the Malcolm Carson.
And the Malcolm Carson means? What does that mean?
The trunks.
Oh, the trunks. If you don't include, right,
If
that's
you
correct.
don't include, it's more than 16?
Yeah. Because you actually have...
It should be the other way, right?
Right.
Right. If you don't...
Because you get more if you add the trunk.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
It should be more.
You're getting more space.
Right.
It should, right, that's right, it should cover the last tree. So if you include the trunk, it will be less than 16.
Right.
So it would cut off, and you would not get that tree. That's right. So where's the...
Wait.
Where's the fourth tree?
No, it's a matter of pride. Just a minute.
Next 4 years.
So why is there
Like the
less...
Bears and the Cubs. We're just on a 4-year
Are those 2 trees
cycle.
out there?
No, just to show, just for demonstration purposes.
It's just the effort. Remember that, Rabbi.
No. Winning is everything.
Yiddishkeit. It's
No.
effort.
It's the only thing. 1 second. Live in the Midwest. If you don't win, you're worthless. I think it's going in the next case.
Oh, no, that's it.
I don't know. It's not penetrating. Let me try to do it with a picture. In other words, he's saying Tezayin is Shalom below Mokum Karsin. Right? If it's 60, extends to that tree which is outside the circle. That's what it means to say. Look, because here the Dalet Amos till the last tree, which is within the circle,
If it's on the line,
and you don't include the trunks,
That's right.
then
it's going to be
part of the
included.
circle.
That's right.
Yes,
Yes.
because it's on the line.
Right.
You don't have to worry about those. If it's tough, of course, it has nothing to do with any measurements. If it's
Right.
touching the line,
Yeah.
it's simply part of the circle, within the circle.
If
If you don't count the trunk.
you don't count the
Yeah,
trunk,
the trunk,
Because-
correct.
because each trunk
But
takes up
if
some
the
room.
trunk, Then that
Right.
part of it,
Which
some
would be
minor
right on it,
measurements
because
beyond the circle.
Right, before.
That's right.
on the line.
It has nothing to do with calculation.
Okay, no calculations. Right. Tezayin below Mokum Karsin means if you don't count the trunks, then that tree which is now on the outer perimeter of the circle would be in the perimeter of the circle.
Right, that's correct.
Okay? So it's only 45 trees if you count the Mokum Karsin. But if you don't to count the Mokum Karsin, then the 16 is going to include that last tree. Okay? Now, let's see that again. Says more Amos Saib is matching the two Sarbal Arba Chamesh Chamesh. Hold the Messiah Rabbi Zira is right for Rabbi Zira. To Rabbi Zira Omar, Rabbi Zira says, Shmona Chutz Mimokum Karsin. If you have 8, if you want to, 8 is something else. There it says that it's a case in the previous parak where it said that you need to have 8 amos between the trees. No, it still doesn't work because there should be a raya against Rabbi Zira. Why is the raya for Rabbi Zira? Rabbi Zira says you don't count the trees. If you don't count the trees here, then you have to ask for more trees.
Yeah.
You don't count the trunks. You have to ask for more trees.
Right.
No, it's a raya. That's the problem.
If you don't count the trunks, that means more trees are within this.
Yeah, but that's not what the Gemara is saying.
But that's what we just.
Right, I understand. Right, that's the opposite of what the Gemara is saying. The Gemara is saying this is raya for Rabbi Zira. Okay, I think this is it. I think I got it. This is the case. The Gemara is saying if you had between each tree 5, then it still wouldn't be. This is the raya for Rabbi Zira. If you have between each tree 5, then you'd still have the same amount of trees. You'd still have the same amount of trees.
Because one amma is taken up by the trunk.
Oh, so wait a second. If you don't count the makom, if you... No, I got it. Second, I think I got it. Yeah, I got it. Okay. If you do count the trunks, let's talk about, okay, so there are 5 amas instead of 4 amas, right? Okay, so you have 3 distances of 5 amas, right? Right? 5, 5, 5. 15, right? The last tree is within 16 amos if you don't count the trunks within the 16. But if you do count the trunks within the 16, then the last tree of this series of 3 is going to be beyond the 16 amos. Again, you have trunk, 5, trunk, 5, trunk, 5, right? And then another trunk, right? Right, you have 4, there's 7 trees in a row, we're counting from the middle tree. So it means you have the middle tree, right? And then 3 on either side. Trunk, 5. Trunk, 5. Trunk, 5, trunk. Right? So if you say that 16 doesn't include the trunks, so then I understand how the last tree is included, because the last tree, not including the trunks, is only 15 amas from the middle tree. Right. But if you're going to say that the trunks are always included in counting 16, then the last tree is going to be outside the 16, because the trunks take up more than an amma. 4 trunks of trees are going to take up more. 3 trunks of trees in the middle are going to take up more than an amma. Works out. That's what Gemara is saying. That which if you still make it 5 by 5, you can still include 5 trees, Messiah, and 45 trees, Messiah, Rabbi Zira. Right? Again, the Rabbi Zira, Amar, Shmona, Chutzim, Magam, Karsim. Whenever you measure your measurements, you don't take into account the trunks. And so here, since the 16 doesn't include trunks, so you have here 15, and you don't include the trunks, so it's still within the 16. Had you include the trunks, it would be outside the 16. Good. If the distance between each trunk was 6 or 7, then of course is much less than 45 trees, right? Because the radius falls much quicker. Why don't we go beyond 7 on 7? Why don't we say it was planted 8 on 8 or 9 on 9? So that from 4 amos to 8 amos is considered to be forbidden, considered to make a kerem and make kilei kerem. Mishmor about sheishes also from says 8 till 16, it's also to plant there, but it's not in a mekadosh. So by virtue of the fact that we stop where the distance is 7 by 7, wanted to indicate it has to be less than 8 amos. Okay, because it's more than 8 amos or more, it doesn't answer. All right, it's late, but the next the stuff is a little bit easier right now. From here on in. So I'm going to try and run a little bit. If you see vegetables, because we didn't do 2 blot yet. What should we do so far? Blot and a half? Less? Blot and something? Blot and a quarter? We start on base and we're still on base, right? Okay, this is very easy though. You see vegetables in a vineyard. Barmaid says, when I get there, I'll pick it out. I'll uproot it. Mutter, it's okay. But if you say, when I come back, it's behind you, and you say, when I come back, I'll get it. Most of the time, there's enough time for it to grow 1/200th of its total growth. It's awesome. That's the shiur by Kilayim. Kilayim is batel 200, right? So if the amount of time which you're going to leave it growing, let's say the growing season is 100 days, right? So the amount that you're going to leave it there for half a day out in the field, that area answers your field because you're a vineyard because of Kilayim. Is that clear? Okay? It says more Rabbi Yossi Bar China Mar Bepoel Shanu. This is also about a worker. However, why? Because the worker doesn't have to stop in the middle and uproot the Kilayim. He goes on his work, come back later on. However, Baal Bus has to go immediately and uproot the Kilayim when he sees it. However, says more, Ba'abais in the middle of hoeing or whatever he's doing, Also, so Kapoli has the same leniency as a Poel, only when he gets to it, he doesn't have to walk over immediately and do it. The Baal Bais Shakim Yeroko Sada Bekerem, a Baal Bais who left vegetables out in a vineyard, Asurim and Lo Ben Acher. Now the thing becomes also both to him and to anybody else. Poel Shakim Yeroko Sada Bekerem, a worker who left vegetables out in the field, it's not his field to Aser. So therefore now, Aser Lo, stuff is Aser for him. Umutzah Chodem, Mutzah to everybody else. So the Gemara asks the obvious question: Kashi Aser Lo Yasser Chodem. Where we ever see such a thing as a relative Isser, if it's also for him, it should be also to everybody. He Mutzah Chodem, it's Mutzah for everybody else. Yeh Mutzah Lo, should be Mutzah to him as well. Elo Rabbi Shimon Rabbi Shimon Domer Eino Dam Makdish Davar Sheino Shlo. You can't be Makdish that which is not yours. Afagav Dam Rabbi Shimon Omar Eino Dam Makdish Davar Sheino Shlo. You can't be Makdish that which is not yours. Hacha Modehu Hacha Shaslo. Here it's the Rabbanon. Since he was lackadaisical and lax in this case, we find him and we don't let him eat this the whatever grew there.
Isn't the worker considered like a shliach for the
Not the Aser for him. You can't mess up things for the Baal Bais against as well. Okay, now here's a big typo. B'shalik danacher. Now, there are two pshatim here. The one we'll learn is that it's kind of similar to what you're saying, Dr. Spinell, which is, when is it okay for anybody else to eat? When another person collects it. But if the Poel himself collected it, since he's the shliach of the Baal Bais, he does aser it for the Baal Bais in that case. Okay, so really that's what we're saying according to this pshat. Okay? In other words, well, actually it's more, I'm sorry, I take that back. No, I take that back. What the second pshat here said, what she brings down is that if the Poel collects it for himself, somebody else collects it, it's mutter. If the Poel, however, collects it for himself, that's when it's also for him. In other words, Reuben is the Poel. If Reuben goes and lets it grow there, right? So Shimon can still eat it. Even Reuben can still eat it if Shimon collected it. Right? But if Reuben collected it and says, well, this is mine, because he gets a certain percentage of the take, he can't aser it. Because vis-a-vis himself, he already asered it when he designated it, and said doesn't designate it, but when he gave it up for when he comes back to it. Okay? So really, he can't aser it ever on anybody else. Only if later on he comes back to collect it for himself, in that case, it's also for him because he already, before and it said, well, I'll get back to it later on.
Well, that's if he's a sharecropper.
Yeah.
What if he's getting paid by the hour?
It doesn't matter. If it's getting paid in kind, it's the same idea. If it's getting paid as a Poel, or he's being Mekayim lo sachsam shor b'tisho. He's eating as he goes along. Okay? Getting back to Avalim Liked Hu. But if he gathered for himself, in other words, if he gathered for himself, also according to this pshat, also ben lo ben kol adam, it's also for him and for anybody else again, because he took it as part of his salary, and therefore he gets to ban it regardless, not just for himself, but for anybody else, because it becomes as if it's his. V'mosi b'od Masayim also, if you add it on 200, it's also the very Rabbi Ali b'sharim b'hadin Yarzuva. They found a certain plant called the Yarzuva, which was easy to reckon this. How do you check it out? How do you check it out? Rabbi China said, locate echad, you take one, you harvest one, and leave another one in the field. Mashazeh poches, zeh mosi. And then you see, that which this poches here means remains the same, and that one adds on, then you can tell what the ratio is. In other words, you compare when this one is grown, so it's proportionally larger than the next one, and then you can tell what's adding on 200. Okay, in other words, you grow to check the proportional growth by harvesting one and comparing it, which has stopped growing, to the ones which continue to grow in the field. Okay, just go a couple more minutes. We didn't do two blah yet, right? We're almost there, right? Where are we? Okay. You were walking in the vineyard. Novelman was right, and seeds fell out of your hand. Or shiyotzim volume, where they came out inadvertently together with the volume, with the fertilizer, or mine with the irrigation. Hazoreah, you were planting the siyarasu ruach lachrov, and the wind scattered the seeds behind you into the vineyard. Mutter. All these cases are mutter. However, if the wind scatter the grain in front of you into a vineyard, Rabbi Kiva Omer, Imasavim, if it created grass, you got to overturn them. Vimaviv, if it already grew a little bit, springtime, it grew a little bit of grain, you have to get rid of the grain which is in the chaff. If it's fully grown already, you got to burn it all at the stake. In other words, the taka there, if it scattered in front of you, or shtickle maze it. Your shtickle intentionally, you should have gone and collected it. Since you didn't go and collect it, so now already it progressively creates more stringent severities of Kilei HaKerem. The one is going to discuss this in greater detail. Amr Abelezer said, Masis Moimim stay Lavan. The Siyaso Ruach l'stei Kerem. Our mission is talking about when you were standing in a grain field and the wind scattered the grain you were carrying into a vineyard. So you're a little bit onus. Rabbi Zira asks, Ma ayitamarta? What did you mean? Be'omeid? It's talking specifically about a case where he was standing in a grain field when this happened, or afilu omeid, or he's saying even if he's standing in a grain field and also he's standing in a vineyard. What's the difference? If you're going to say it's where he's standing in a grain field, then I would say that if he was standing in a vineyard with grain seeds, which is like a poshea, it's an act of criminal negligence, low. I don't give him this kula that if it falls behind him, he doesn't have to worry about it. I say, what right do you have to stand in a vineyard with grain seeds in your hand? Now, you better make sure you gather up every last one, otherwise they're going to sock it to you. In Tamar, if you're going to say that, the kula service should say that even if he's standing in a grain field, that it comes out that this kula of lachrov applies regardless. It's here from the following case. If somebody's planting and the wind scatters the stuff behind him, mutar mipnei shehu ones. It's mutar because it's inadvertent. Manachem, what do you talk about? If he's standing in the state kerem and the wind scatters his grain, he's committing avera. Not a real avera, but he's being criminally negligent. Vata mata ones, you're going to call him an ones. Elakiona kayom, what I talk about, but when we stay lovan, we're standing in a field of grain, we also ruchless stay kerem, and the wind causes stuff to go into the vineyard. In that case, I say that there's a kula. Okay? Rabbi Zir and Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Mishur Miyosha said, "Imasavin yupach." When it says if it's already grew into grass, you have to overturn them. Hakol mutter. In that case, but you can use the grass. Imaviv, it's already grown a little bit and it's already spring-like. You know, paid, and you have to remove then the kernels from. You know what? This is already a new sugya. Let's stop here for tonight. We'll come back to Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish tomorrow night. Okay, it's almost 2 o'clock.